Ah, shoot. Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for The Chute, which is episode 3 of season 3 of Star Trek Voyager. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek Voyager, one episode at a time. In this video I cover the third season episode, The Chute. So The Chute is the episode in which Tom and Harry get accused of a bombing and thrown into a prison where they're giving this device that makes them grow irritated, and so they're surrounded by prisoners with no guards, no safeguards, and they have to fight for their lives where they're trapped what they believe is underground in a chute. Tom gets stabbed and is dying, and Harry tries to get him help and shacks up with this other prisoner who thinks that Tom is dead and that Harry should just give up on him, but Harry tries to come up with a way to escape. He climbs to the top of the chute only to discover that they are in space, that they're in a space station, so there is no escape. And Harry starts to go mad by the device that makes him irritated and almost kills Tom Paris. However, later he defends Tom Paris with his life. Meanwhile, Janeway tries to reason with the government that are holding Tom and Harry, but they can't be reasoned with. They think that Voyager are aiding terrorists. Even after Janeway discovers the real terrorists, the government is still uninterested in helping them. So with Neelix's help and the help of the actual terrorists, they are able to stage a prison break, and they get Tom and Harry out just in the nick of time. So, this is the first episode, I believe, and there's not many. I believe there's only 2 episodes that I can think of at the moment of Star Trek that not only did I not see it when it first came out, I didn't even know it existed. In fact, I didn't even find out that it existed until years later. The other one being Mortal Coil, which is in season 4 of Voyager, but I'll get to that when I get to that. Because I talked before about a couple episodes that I intentionally didn't watch, such as Persistence of Vision and Tuvix. And I think I mentioned an episode or 2 that I missed when it first came out, but then I saw it later. But this one I had no idea it even existed. And, some people might be like, oh, what's the big deal? That's common in the 90s. But you got to remember that I was obsessed with Star Trek in the 90s as a teenager. And I used to, watch every single episode religiously and tape it and watch it repeatedly. Although I did talk about how I gave up on taping it during season 2 of Voyager and season 4 of DS9. Early start of both seasons, I gave up on taping it. So by this stage, I definitely wasn't taping it. But still, it's very unusual. And I had no idea that I missed an episode. So I didn't see this until the year 2000. When I was living in Albuquerque, and I think I was taping reruns of Voyager off the TV because I was trying to make up for all the episodes that I missed. If I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure I was doing that. And I remember this episode came on syndication, and I'm like, what the hell is this? Some of the episodes, like Mortal Coil, for example, I looked up online, so eventually I knew existed. But this is the first and only time where I turned the TV on to watch Voyager, and it was this episode that I had no idea existed. So I don't know if my viewing of this episode is colored by that fact. Maybe not. It's hard for me to tell. Can't really tell that if I had seen this episode when it first came out, would I have a different opinion of it? I don't know. But my opinion of this episode is that it is derivative, boring, boring, and just not interesting. So boring. So this gets into my overall complaints about season 3. And I think I mentioned in another video that, and I especially get this when I was analyzing this episode and thinking about researching this episode and thinking about it, that going through season 3 of Voyager is going to be very similar for me when I went through season 2 of Next Generation, whereas I realized just how bad the writing is and how it's poorly written, and sort of analyze exactly why it is. Now, I just recently did a video where I talked about season 3 as a whole and the writing of season 3, and the explanation that I personally came up with of why season 3 was subpar is with the departure of Michael Piller. He was no longer there to sort of whip them into shape and drive them and challenge them to be better, and they felt like, oh, they were free to try new things and make it more about space adventures and stuff. But to be fair, this episode was actually first conceived of in season 1 of Voyager. I know they've been trying to make it into an episode since season 1 and 2. To be fair, and that's why it actually has a character element to it, unlike a lot of episodes of season 3. But I think it is still an example of the bad writing of season 3 because it's derivative. And a lot of the episodes of season 3 are just. And as I said in other videos, it reminds me a lot of seasons 1 and 2 in Enterprise, which the 3 seasons combined are my 3 worst seasons, my 3 least favorite seasons of the franchise. Well, that is until Picard season 2, but outside of that, they're my least favorite seasons of the franchise. And I think they all have in common that they're unimaginative, and they're just falling back. They're derivative. They're falling back on all of the Star Trek tropes and cliches. This one in particular, the falsely accused, trapped in a prison trope. And like stuff like it's similar to like Hard Time in that regard. In the original series, they'd often get trapped in the prison cell, like in the Nazi episode, or in the Roman episode, or the cat's paw, and it's just a common trope that main characters get falsely accused and they get thrown in prison. Star Trek 6, another example. And this is done in such a uninteresting, ordinary, bland way. I don't need to see yet another falsely accused episode, and the logic in it is weak, and it's just not interesting to watch. When I first turned on this episode, and I thought, oh my god, this is an episode I never heard of, never seen. I thought it was a special treat, oh my god, there's actually something new. But then I watched it and I'm it wasn't a treat at all. I was like, oh well, it wasn't that much of a bad thing that I missed this one. And that's what I'll say as I was watching it. I mainly just found it boring. It was hard for me to sit through. This is not. When I saw this episode on the list of episodes coming up next, I was like, oh god, I guess I gotta watch this. And when I sat down to watch it, it was just as boring as I thought it would be. Now, I will say, I liked the scenes with Janeway and Voyager better. Every time we went back to that, I was like, whew, finally we're back to this. But then when we went back to the Tom and Harry stuff, I was like, it's so some people might defend this episode as being good character story for Tom and Harry, and there are some good character moments between them, which I will get to. But for the most part, I think it's, again, analyzing and thinking about it, it's the poor writing. It's the jumbled thing. So first of all, yes, it's derivative that they're in prison and have to fight for their lives, and they're with a lawless group of people who are constantly violent. All of that felt very cliche, even outside of Star Trek. And then they meet, so you have the stereotypical bad guy prisoner who wants to kill them for no good reason. That's in every prison movie and show. And then you have, they meet this guy who's kind of helping them, and he's talking about a manifesto, and he's talking about how this clamp is there to drive them crazy. And he doesn't really serve a purpose. And that's the first thing I was struck with, even the first time I saw this episode. I'm like, what are they, why is this guy here? What are they trying to say with him? Because they had all these scenes with him going on and on to Harry Kim. It's like, I have this manifesto. It's all about they're doing this clamp to try to drive people insane so we won't cooperate. And Harry presents it like it's some crazy conspiracy theory, and throws it in his face, is like, you're insane. And at the end of the episode, when they find out that the clamps were in fact driving them mad, he was like, oh my god, that guy was right. And I was thinking, well, of course he's fucking right. That's the most obvious conclusion. They're acting like there's this big, grand revelation, great conspiracy theory, but it's fucking obvious. Obvious in any one of the eyes. Of course that's why they're doing it. What other theory would you even have? When they first mentioned the thing, that's what I just naturally assumed. Oh, they're just making them agitated so that they'll fight each other and not work together. Duh. It's a natural conclusion, so I don't understand. And it felt like this time was all wasted on him trying to be like Yoda or something, conquer your feelings and control, use the clamp to control it or whatever. And Harry was just dismissing him. So I felt so this is going to come into play. This is going to be relevant to the plot. Harry's going to somehow, Harry, learning to overcome the clam and using that to escape is going to be important. So this is why we're spending so much time on this fucking guy and his stupid manifesto and the stupid theories, because it's going to be relevant to the plot later on. And guess what? It isn't. It isn't. It has nothing to do with anything. And Janeway just rescues Tom and Harry Harry did not effectuate his rescue whatsoever. Now, I suppose you could say that Harry did overcome the clamp by not killing Tom Paris and regretting it, and then trying to defend him and fight it off. But there's no indication that what that guy was saying helped him overcome it. In fact, there's every indication that Harry just disregarded that guy and be like, yo, you're just an insane conspiracy theorist, go away. And so I would argue against any such theories that that's how it was relevant. And it's not relevant. It wasn't relevant at all. It had nothing to do with anything. Why is that even important that there's a clamp? I don't understand why we wasted so much time on this guy talking about his stupid manifesto and him helping Tom Paris. Well, they just end up breaking up and he ends up throwing them out anyway. What's the point? What's the point? This is why I find this episode so boring. Is a lot of the things that happen in the prison, first of all, cliches. They're just prison cliches we see in every prison movie. They offer nothing original, nothing new to it. And then they have all this stuff that happens that has no relevance to the plot whatsoever. This is exactly what I'm talking about. And the poor writing of season 3, and I dare say we are going to see this throughout season 3. I mean, we just saw this in flashback already, so this is 2 for 2 of bad writing stuff that has nothing to do with anything. Now, I did say that I enjoyed the Voyager plot more, and I was happy every time we went back to the Voyager plot, because I did find it more interesting. that being said, it's still flawed. I still have a lot of issues with it. So Voyager go back to the guy, and they're like, oh, have you found any word of, where my officers were? And he's like, oh, yes, we threw them in prison because they're terrorists, which means you're supporting terrorists too, so you're going to be arrested as submit to our boarding teams, which I actually thought was a cool scene. I did like Janeway being like, him acting like he could strong-arm Janeway and her being like, trying to be reasonable, but then he's obviously being a dick and accusing her of being a terrorist, and she's just like, all right, fine, well, fuck you then, and sort of putting up a resistance. So I did like that. And then she went off on a quest to find the real terrorists so she could trade them for Tom and Harry, and she did that, accomplished this, found the two actual terrorists, which I thought the two actors who played them did a nice enough job, and it was interesting enough and all that, and so then took those terrorists back to the bad guys, and they were like, yeah, I don't give a fuck if you have the actual terrorist. We're still, once they're convicted, and there's no way out. So unless you all want to be arrested too, I suggest you get the hell out of here. All right, so I have several things about this. First of all, if they think that Voyager crew are supporting terrorism, why is it that they just simply let them leave? Because they made a point that once Voyager left her space, they stopped chasing them. Why? Like, why? Why is it they're like, oh, if you're in our space, then we'll arrest you. But if you're out in our space, it's okay if you support the terrorists just as long as you're not in our space. You can support them outside of our space. That's all well and good. What? What kind of authoritarian regime is this? What the fuck is wrong with them? And then, as far as, like, them refusing to take the real terrorists, what? Why? They have no interest in that Voyager caught the actual terrorists. They have no interest in actually punishing the people who bombed a whole place and killed like all these off-duty officers, as they said. They have no interest in punishing them. They're like, oh yeah, as long as we have these two patsies in the prison cell, it's fine. We don't care if they go off and set more bombs and help the terrorists more and kill more people. That's fine. We don't give a shit. I can understand that they don't want to admit they're wrong and they're authoritarian assholes. But I think it would be more likely for them to be like, oh, yes, thank you. We'll return your officers shortly. Just give us the terrorists and we'll return your officers. And then with the intention of taking the terrorists and just like pushing them off and be like, oh, well, too bad we can't find your officers, and just keep delaying them and whatever. That I would buy more. I don't buy at all that they're just like, terrorist, who cares? Like, why would they do that? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's all contrivance to make it so that Janeway has no choice but to break them out of prison. Like, I think there's a better way that they could have gotten to that conclusion. But it was so contrived. And then, when they go to effectuate the prison break, they use Neelix's ship because they're like, oh, they will never let Voyager in our space. But they would let a random alien freighter dock with their prison facility and remain dock and not fire on them. Like, first of all, this is a prison station. It should have ships guarding it or some kind of weaponry guarding it that would shoot Neelix's ship down before it got anywhere near to it. Secondly, once it was docked, they should have fired at it while it was docked instead of just arguing with Neelix. Thirdly, once Neelix undocked, they're like, prepare your ship for inspection, and Neelix just, managed to fly through the thing and fly away, and then they stop chasing him again. What is the deal with these aliens that just stop chasing people as soon as they leave? It's like they're lazy or something. These aliens are lazy. They're like, oh, well, they're actually moving fast and I can't be bothered. Like, you expect me to actually fly my ship? I got better things to do than like to go after terrorists, which is my whole job. I'm just gonna sit around here and twiddle my thumbs instead of actually trying to catch the terror. What the hell is wrong with these aliens? There's so many plot holes in this goddamn episode. It's crazy. And for that matter, they're like, oh, we can't bring Voyager in. We have to use Neelix's ship. But then Neelix came under attack from those ships anyway. So it seems like Voyager would have been able to fight off those ships better than Neelix. Neelix's tiny freighter shouldn't have stood a chance compared to Voyager. But I mean, and the whole thing about, oh, they wouldn't let our Voyager get into space in the first place, but they let Neelix's ship get out of their space, like, and they never should have let any ship get near the space station, regardless of whether it was Voyager or not. Like, this thing really, really irritates me. So, what did I like about the episode then? Well, some of the scenes with Tom and Harry, even though I stand by my statement that this was boring. That there's a whole storyline with them. Every time I went back to it, I was like, but that being said, the fact that the clamp was causing him to go a bit insane, and Tom was also delirious for of dying, like dismantle Harry's like tube that he was using to escape, and this drove Harry like to go insane and like start beating Tom, and he was actually thinking of killing him. And then later, after they were released from prison, Harry like feeling guilty about that and saying, I can't believe it. Don't you remember I almost killed you? And Tom saying, I'll tell you what I remember. I remember you like fighting off a whole group of people saying nobody touches him, he's my friend. I gotta admit, that was a bit touching. that was like a touching moment, and it was a good moment in Tom and Harry's relationship. I don't think it justified the rest of the episode, which is boring and derivative, but I did at the very least I appreciated that one scene at the end where Harry's defending Tom, saying nobody touches him, and then Tom saying that's what I remember. But also I don't like the fact that how simple it was for them to leave, that all it had to do was Janeway and Tuvok came in, got them, left, and then boom, instantly they're back in pristine and in great health again all of a sudden. Like, I know like Starfleet has great medical technology, but still I would have appreciated if it took a while for Tom to recover. If Tom and Harry had this conversation in sickbay with Tom still in bed, like still recovering, it would have been nice. It seems like they're all too obsessed with the damn reset button, and it felt like all this hell that they suffered through and everything they suffered in that episode was very inconsequential. Like none of it really mattered. Like it was just erased like that. Also, so I will say this episode came out in 1996, but I saw it in the year 2000, as I said. So it reminded me of one of my favorite movies, Dark City, which came out in 98. So it did come out after this episode was made, but I did see it first. Because I think of the scene where Harry Kim, and I'm about to spoil Dark City, so if you haven't seen it, it's a 30-year-old movie, so that's on you if you haven't seen it. But So the scene where Harry goes up the chute and he finds himself that he's in space, that kind of reminded me of Dark City, where they go to the edge of the city and find out, spoilers, that they're in space, that they're on a spaceship. And God, it reminds me of it in a way to realize like how shitty it is. Because Dark City was so, like, that was a huge revelation. I was like, oh my God, they're in fucking space. Like, I remember being completely blown away. Like, that is like a Sixth Sense type, Bruce Willis is dead the whole time. Again, spoiling everything from the 90s. Now, that's that kind of moment. What am I going to spoil next? Fight Club? No, I'll stop. But, yeah, it was that kind of wow, shock, surprise, great moment. Whereas in this episode, it reminded me of it because it's very similar. Like, they go to the edge and find out they're in space. But in this case, I'm like, oh, look, they're in space. Okay. Fine, I guess. Like, why does that really make a difference? Like, they played, even in this episode, they played it like it was a huge, big, oh my God, look, we're in space! Ah! A show about, spaceships, where people live on a spaceship and travel to space. Who would have thunk that this whole time they were in space? Oh my God! Anyway, I would now like to thank all my Patreon supporters for supporting me on Patreon. It's very much appreciated. It does help me continue with the channel. I want to give a big special thanks to Brandon Neal House and Jordan Johnson. Thank you both so very, very much for your strong support. I'd also like to give a shout out to Tyler Cease, Benjamin Mead, Antarius, Francisco, Chuck Hooks, Kyrie091, Anthony D. Benedictus, Ricky, Maddie Jester, Alessandro Migalacio, Norman Buchwald, Stephen Kennedy, Britton Berg, and Allison Fordyce. Thank you all so very much for your support. Alright, so we do have a couple of patron comments for this episode. First comment is from Kyrie091, who says, "The chute, more like the boot," which is what I want to give this episode. Mark, I lied a moment ago. I said I want to give this episode the boot, but in all honestly, I don't remember it. It's possible that I want to retain the boot and not give it to this episode at all. I just can't be sure until you tell me how much I like it. So tell me, on a scale of Antarius to Norman Buchwald, how much do I like this episode? I'll let the audience decide how that scale works. And I will say Norman replied to this comment saying 7, apparently. So on a scale from Norman Buchwald from Antarius to Norman Buchwald, I say you give this a Benjamin Mead, and I'll let you determine what that means. Anyway, next comment is from, although I will say before I get to the next comment, I do like the boot because you want to give this episode the boot. I do too, to be fair. Anyway, next comment is from Antarius, who says, the script could have easily been the standard wrongly accused episode, but this version showing them as innocent prisoners feels much fresher. Other aspects also don't follow the normal formula. One would expect Paris to be the hero of the episode since he is an ex-con and knows his way around prison, but instead Harry takes the lead most of the time. Also, one would expect that the prison break will be successful, but instead they need outside help. There are some details one could nitpick, but they don't bother me that much in this episode. It was a surprise that the authors remembered Neelix's ship. Still, they could have used it more often since it seemed to be quite capable compared to smaller TNG-style shuttles they use instead. after watching this episode, I took a look at the oncoming ones. We now enter a bad string of episodes, clearly worse than the mediocre ones we had to sit through at the start of season 2. My rating is a strong 7 out of 10. Well, you do have a higher opinion of this episode than I do. I will say that, because to me, it didn't defy expectations. To me, this is just your standard run-of-the-mill prison story, adding nothing new. I mean, sure, they did subvert expectations by focusing on Harry more than Tom. But so what? Just my opinion, sorry. I just didn't think that made a difference. Just me. But hey, not telling you how you should think. You're more than welcome to like this episode. Although you did say the nitpicks never bothered you. Oh, they bother me. Oh, they do bother me. But again, that is just me. Next comment is from Benjamin Mead, who says, okay, so the Chute. Well, Chute. So I'm a criminologist at the University in Virginia, and my area of research and expertise is punishment in prisons. And depictions of prisons in Star Trek usually don't serve any penological function other than making dramatic TV. Hard time is an example of a punishment that is just designed to be torture. The prison in this episode is not as bad since it's not virtual. You could at least argue its incapacitation, i.e. the goal of punishment is to take away the offender's ability or capability to commit crime, but pumping prisoners full of adrenaline would actually undermine the order and safety of your prison. Again, anarchic and lawless prisons make good entertainment, but would not be suitable or purposeful in the real world. With that being said, I don't hate this episode and used to like it quite a bit. I think the reveal that the prison is actually a space station was quite shocking. My partner, who has never really watched Trek other than with me, actually said, "Oh, that's scary," when it showed me the space shot. I thought the ending between Tom and Harry was touching. Well, I will agree with you on that last sentence there, but that's about it. I never knew that about you. That you're studied criminologist at university. That's very interesting, and it's very interesting to get your perspective. While you were talking about this lawlessness kind of anarchy style prison is impractical, it made me also think, and how it's just like a TV thing. It made me think of Prison Break. For those who saw Prison Break, season 3 had a prison that was in Panama, I think, that was supposed to be, it was like similar, where it was lawlessness, there were no guards, there was, people would just wander the prison and like kill each other, and there was like no law or guards or anything. And yeah, how impractical. By the way, I hated season 3 of Prison Break. And so I just don't find that interesting. And I totally believe you when you say it's impractical. Like, it does sound impractical to me. I get the idea is that the idea is just to punish people, and the clamp thing, being there to prevent them from working together because there's no guards there and no one overseeing them. I suppose, maybe that's the point of it, that they don't care if the prisoners, what they do or what they kill themselves, because they just throw them in there and just don't worry about policing them at all. I don't know. I could see a society having that kind of prison, but I don't think it is even good entertainment. Maybe I'm just sick of the whole prison cliche. In general, I'm not a huge fan of of like these prison stories or whatever, unless they're done right. Like, of course, I love Shawshank Redemption. The show Oz was pretty good, but overall, it's just like, especially when they do ridiculous like Hollywood cliches like this episode does. And that's interesting. I will say it's very interesting that you found the reveal that they were in space shocking. I think maybe I was influenced by the fact that I saw Dark City first. And the Dark City, again, spoiling it, but I've already spoiled it. The Dark City reveal was one of the best movie reveals ever. And that was the same thing they did here. And it was like 1 billion times better. So maybe this was part of the reason why it was underwhelming. Because it felt like just a really cheap, bad version of that. But I don't know. Maybe. It's hard for me to say what I would have thought of it if I actually saw it when it first came out. But I can't imagine that I would have found it that shocking, because it doesn't seem that shocking. It's like, oh look, they're in space instead of underground. Whoop-de-doo. I don't know. I mean, it's not like it would have been. The fact they're in space, I think, is supposed to make it harder for them to break out. But if they were underground, like, it seems to me that would be equally as hard. Well, maybe not equally, because, vacuum of space and all that. But seems like it would be well guarded, the area that's above ground. So I don't know. It doesn't really seem to make that big of a difference. As well as, like, I'm trying to think of some of these parodies like SNL or something that have these big twists that actually, like, don't make that much of a difference, and they're very underwhelming. And you're like, oh, look, yeah, this is the twist. So how's that really different? Like, anyway, I don't know. I'm definitely much more cynical on this episode than most people are. So we'll get to the next comment, which is Norman Buchwald, who says, so I missed this episode when it originally aired. Hey, me too. I was in an intense library school program, working part-time and doing all this volunteer work until I saw it. Had to give up the volunteer stuff. And so caught it on later season reruns, where I already saw via Usernet that this was a much talked about episode. I admit I liked it, but you have to dismiss what the hell this society is doing with this prison system, as I guess this was 30 years before Alligator Alcatraz. Frowny face. But what drew me into the story was Harry Kim dealing with this belligerent and Garrett Wang's strong acting. I also liked the challenges he had where Tom could not be there for him and worried about the outcome of their friendship. But Tom, who had a more mature understanding, said he knew before the drug may have affected Kim where he stood, and I loved that. I'm almost tempted to say that this is the strongest Kim/Paris friendship episode, and this new understanding should have been further developed, but the Rick Berman reset single episode only button takes over, so the episode is in a flash and the pan over of a hellish WoW prison, which, granted, considering how often our main characters are in prison, an all Trek series is still an atmosphere-inducing setting. The B story of Janeway figuring out what is going on and coming up with a rescue was boring and seemed to avoid maybe big discussions she should have been having with Chakotay and Tuvok on the Prime Directive, they being the only ship, etc. Unfortunately, this becomes the cliche rescue story pattern in Voyager, and the story moves the quality down. As for where Tom and Harry will be in their friendship, that is resets, not so much to say there either, and of course only our characters get rescued. Who cares about anyone else? Because of these factors, I will only give this episode a 7 out of 10. Well, not to spoil my rating, but your only 7 out of 10 is much higher than what I'm going to give it. So that, again, that's interesting, the different perspective that people have on this episode, because you're saying the exact opposite of what I said, that you thought the B story with Janeway was boring, where I thought the A story with Harry and Tom was boring, and I actually liked it when they went back to the Janeway story, even though I had a lot of issues with the logic of that story. At least it was more engaging, it was more thrilling. But so I'm really not going to get into this a lot now. I'll get into this more when I cover season 5, 6, and 7 of Voyager, but this is another example of four-head aliens attacking Voyager. Oh, look, there's random four-head aliens attacking Voyager, and they just give up as soon as they leave. Blah, blah, blah. Seems very formulaic. And the other episode that this reminds me of, that it's derivative of, is Resistance, which is a far superior episode. Is so much better, and it's similar in which it had B'Elanna and Tuvok, being in prison, being tortured, but that wasn't the central purpose of the episode. The central purpose was this great character story with Janeway befriending the senile old man who has a very tragic backstory, which is a great backdrop for an episode to have. And the antagonists, the authoritarians in that episode, even though there were some plot holes in that episode too, but the antagonists made so much more sense. They were much more riveting, and it's also very similar because you also have a resistance, you have a terrorist group that are trying to fight this authoritarian regime. It's basically just copying off of Resistance and doing it a much shittier job. And that's what it is. I think that's another reason why I really don't like this episode. Now, as far as the Tom and Harry stuff, I just don't find it that interesting. As I said, I liked the ending where, Tom says, I remember him saying, but the whole thing with them striving to survive and talking about food and being like, oh, I would just imagine this food. I just find that very derivative, very cliche of tons of prison stuff. I don't think it enhances their story. And plus, the fact that they're just thrown in the prison off screen at the start of the episode and they're falsely accused yet again, falling on the falsely accused cliche, just really distance me from giving a shit about anything that's going on in this episode. But anyway, and it's interesting to hear that this is, I think I heard somewhere else online that this was a well-liked episode and that there was, a lot of people talking about it. I think I read this quote from Kenneth Biller, who wrote the episode, which of course he did. This quote from him saying that he was surprised of how much people liked it online because he wasn't that big of a fan of it. And I'm surprised that people liked it online as well. I'm looking it up on IMDb now. IMDb, it has a 6.6 rating, which actually is a fairly low rating for a Voyager episode. So it doesn't, like, everyone's telling me that it's well liked online, but that doesn't seem to be the case, which I think is more in keeping on how it actually was. Anyway, so let's get to the next comment, which is from Ricky, who says, this episode was fine. Not one of the worst of season 3, but honestly, it's a forgettable episode to me. And Harry Kim does have his moments, like protecting Tom and exploring a bit of his dark side. And I did like the friendship with Tom and Harry, but the episode was a little slow for me and ultimately unremarkable, so my rating is a 5 out of 10. So anyone I can count on being close to my opinion, Ricky, that's you, but I dare say you're still more positive on this episode than I am. I guess I am the rain cloud here. It's not often that I totally disagree with my patron supporters, so I do really appreciate, especially you, Ricky, although we're similar. We don't disagree that much because you're thinking it's a forgettable episode, and I think it's a forgettable episode too, but I think it's worse than just forgettable, though. So let's get to it. Thank you, patrons, so much for your comments. So my rating for the Chute out of 10 is going to be a 3, very poor. Yeah, I think this is a classic example of bad writing. I think that the characters that they introduce in the prison are just walking, talking cliches. They serve no purpose. The plot does not flow, doesn't serve a function. Like, what's the whole point of that guy in his manifesto? Doesn't seem to have anything to do with anything. And the rest of the scenes in the prison is Tom and Harry, like, talking about food and being chased away by crazy people, which is all cliches that we've seen in prison movies and other stuff over and over again. As I said, this episode is a pale comparison to what Resistance did in season 2, and the Janeway and Voyager stuff, as I said, was at least interesting, but it was full of plot holes. It made no sense. These aliens, why would they not care about catching the actual terrorists? Why would they not care about trying to catch Voyager if they think that Voyager are helping terrorists? Like, these people don't seem to actually give a shit about the things they say they give a shit about. Like, they're supposed to be hard on crime authoritarianism, but they just let terrorists get away with bombing shit. Like, it doesn't this episode is just so poorly written. It's just not good. And the whole thing about, I think one of the Patreon supporters brought up the fact that they liked that Harry didn't, is subverted expectations because Harry didn't effectuate the rescue like you'd think they would. But I actually see that as a negative, because Harry, though, that means all the plot lines with Harry using that pipe trying to get up the chute was completely pointless and a waste of time, because he just got saved by Janeway anyway. The Deus Ex Machina Janeway saves the day. So what's the point of Harry trying to get out of the chute and trying to effectuate? Yeah, Harry and Tom were just pointless because they didn't do anything to effectuate the rescue. Now, I guess you could argue that Harry kept Tom alive long enough to get rescued, and fair, but still, like, and plus the way that Janeway rescued them using Neelix's ship, like, doesn't make any sense. Like, these people should have destroyed Neelix's ship way before it got there anyway. It's all very, like, bad plotting, like Hollywood is good. Why is it in Star Trek that whenever there's a prison, like space station or planet, the bad guys who run the prison don't seem to, like, have any protection about keeping people away or helping rescue? This will come up in season 5 of DS9 pretty soon with the whole Dominion thing in prison that Garrick and Worf escape from too easily. Like, why did they leave the runabout in orbit? And so it's just, there's too many things about this episode, and I just find it boring. I just find it so derivative of so much better things. In fact, I would have given this episode a 2 if it wasn't for that scene with Tom and Harry at the end where Tom says, I tell you what I remember. I remember this, you saying that he's my friend nobody touched. That's a good scene. That's a touching line. I will give you that. It's enough to raise it to a 3 out of 10, but still. I was thinking of maybe giving it a 4, but I was like, nah. All the other things, thinking about how boring it is and how derivative it is, like, no, it doesn't deserve a 4. In fact, I think I'm generous by giving it a 3. But yeah, way lower than all my Patreon supporters, which it's the first time in a while I think that happens. So it's very interesting. I do appreciate when that happens. But anyway, that is it for my review of The Chute. If you enjoyed my review for this episode, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment, that sort of thing helps me out. But if you really want to help out the channel, you could do so by supporting me on Patreon. There's a link to that in the description below. I have different rewards for different tiers, such as pre-releases. You can make comments that I'll read in my videos, and yeah, a series of patron-only videos where I revisit my reviews that I've already done. So let's see what's coming up next on the channel. Saturday will be my review of the next Voyager episode, The Swarm. Monday we'll be starting Season 5 of DS9 with my review of Apocalypse Rising. And Wednesday covering the next episode of Voyager, False Prophets. And then next Thursday I'll be over on Patreon for one of those Patreon exclusive episodes, revisiting my review for the DS9 episode, The Ship. So that's what's coming up on my channel. Be sure to check me out as I continue to cover Star Trek Voyager and Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and doing many other videos on Star Trek and other shows as well. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that, and thanks a lot for watching.